Welcome to the Hawkridge Systems e-learning for SOLIDWORKS Composer. This is the top 10 things you need to know to use SOLIDWORKS Composer effectively. My name is Scott Woods. I'm the product manager here at Hawkridge Systems for SOLIDWORKS Composer. And this presentation is going to be basically 10 steps that you would need to really get a good feel for in order to use Composer effectively. This presentation will focus primarily on step-by-step instructional content. Composer, of course, is capable of doing much more than that. A lot of animation, interactive capabilities, part lists, stuff of that nature. But what we've seen, especially for beginners of the software and companies, people just trying to get a good feel for it, that's what these steps are basically created to explain and help you guys out. So let's go ahead and kick this off here. I'm going to start at number 10, work back to number 1, do the complete scenario here. So number 10 in the top 10 things you should know about Composer, or you need to know about Composer, is the default document properties. So the default document properties are going to control anything going forward. If you're currently working on a project in Composer, the default document properties will not be affecting your current project. You would have to go to the current document properties, which I'll show you here in 1 second. But jumping into Composer, we have a blank slate here. Just open up the program, left it as that. If I go to File, Properties, you'll see that document properties are grayed out, and that's because I don't have a document open. If I had a document open, I can go to document properties and adjust those properties. The default document properties, however, I can edit because that's affecting anything that I create in the future. So the two fields that I recommend taking a look at in the default document properties is the input and the paper space. The rest are important too. Just go through those and kind of pick and choose to what you think would suit your needs, and then test that. But these two fields is what I guess we're recommending for 90% of the use cases out there. So paper space, viewport ratio. I like to use viewport ratio because by using a viewport ratio, an SMG file can be used for all of your 2D elements, all your prints, but it can also be used for animation, anything that is going to take a high definition resolution, because the viewport ratio looks at the viewport. Viewport can be set to 19 by 16 or 4 by 3 or various different formats, so user controlled there. And so the document's constantly looking at the viewport ratio of each view, and you can control that per view, which is really nice compared to setting this to like legal or letter, and then that forces every single view to be that size. This gives you more of a variation and allows you to be able to control the document a lot better. So it's currently what I recommend. The only case that this really causes a problem is if you're going to be printing a PDF or printing to a printer directly through Composer. If that's the case, you probably want to set this to your paper size. If you're not, if you're going to be publishing this out, bringing images into another document, stuff like that, viewport ratio works really well. Now the input, this is the field that we really want to focus on. And I'll leave this open here for a minute. During the recording, I think it'll be important to go back to the recording and really check out these options. What you want to make sure is that merge file into one actor per part is checked. That is specific for SOLIDWORKS files. Or really anything that has a file tree structure. If you're importing an STL file or a step file or an IGES, you don't want to have this checked because the entire assembly that you're importing is going to come in as a single part. Now with merge file into one actor per part, merging a SOLIDWORKS assembly, the SOLIDWORKS top level assembly is going to be an assembly, all sub-assemblies are going to be sub-assemblies, all parts are going to be parts. Exactly how you would expect. With this unchecked, if you have a part with multiple bodies, that part actually comes in as an assembly with multiple parts in that assembly. It can be really confusing for import and update and working in the files if you're unsure of what's going on there. So very important to notice that one there and understand it. Import as bodies, also very important. If that is unchecked, it's going to import everything as faces. So if you have a cube, it's going to be 6 faces opposed to a solid cube importing in. And that's really the two important items here. Meta properties, that's important because we want to bring that custom data from SOLIDWORKS into Composer, and the rest don't really affect too much. The bodies and the merge file into one actor per part are the two top ones there. Okay, so let's jump back to our PowerPoint. So that's number 10. Default document properties. You want to go and you want to edit this before you actually start your project. If you've already started a project, you can go into the document properties and make these adjustments too and be fine. Okay, number 9, working backwards, opening a model. So pretty basic stuff, but there is some items to look out for. So File, Open. We want to navigate to our SOLIDWORKS assembly. I always suggest to go here. If you're opening up an assembly, might as well choose that. Your list will be a lot less there. And here's this. There's assembly right there I want to import. Now, by default, Open is checked. Now that's fine. I prefer and I suggest to say Merge into New Document, and I'll explain why that is once it imports in. These should already be set. That's in your default document properties, and we say Open. This is going to take roughly 45 seconds to a minute, something like that, to import a standard file. What I like to say is it really takes about as long as it would take in, pull that back up, it would take just about as long to import into Composer as it would take to open into SOLIDWORKS. So if it takes 10 minutes to open in SOLIDWORKS, it's probably going to take 10 minutes to open in Composer. A way to get around that would be, if you already have it open in SOLIDWORKS, save it as an SMG file. So you don't have to go to Composer, reopen it, and waste that time. You can just export it right there and make it a lot faster. Okay, so we brought in our model. Now, the reason why I said merge into new document is because when we go to the assembly tree here, we'll see that there's a root, and now I have our assembly under the root. If I just said open, this assembly would open at the root level. There wouldn't be a drop down for Boxer, which means that this SMG file is permanently tied to that specific assembly. Merging into a new document puts it under the root, and so now if I wanted to bring additional items into this project or into this SMG file, I could. And that's as easy as File, Open, choosing something, merge into current document, and it'll put it also under the root side by side. Now, the benefit of having multiple items here is that you can update them independently. So if I had 10 different subassemblies and under this root that made up the top level assembly in SOLIDWORKS, I could reconstruct that in Composer and update just the ones I need. Now that's as easy as doing a file update, which is right here, which we'll get to later on in this presentation, and point to that specific SOLIDWORKS assembly that you want to update. It searches under the root, identifies the one assembly that needs to be updated, just updates that one. Now, limitations in doing that in an SMG file is every assembly under the root needs to be a separate assembly in SOLIDWORKS. So you can't have two of the 300 RC boxers in this list. It's not going to know which one to update. It would typically only update the first in the list, which is a downfall. But we get around that by using projects. And if you're interested in projects, shoot me an email. I'll pop up my email here at the end. We have some information online and some custom content as well. So that gets a little bit more into depth of how to use Composer, and then we're not really covering that in this presentation. So just keep in mind there are some limitations there. But this is very important to know in the kind of top 10 things that you should know, especially when getting started with the application. Okay, so that's opening a model, pretty basic. And we get down to number 8, Navigational Controls. Now, Control and Alt in Composer are your friends. Like you need those to really operate effectively in Composer. And it looks like we might have a question here. The question was, can we rename the file before we merge? Yes, of course. If you have so say you have in SOLIDWORKS, you have an assembly and you want to bring that assembly in twice. Well, if you take that assembly and rename it, it's technically another assembly in SOLIDWORKS, and you can you do a file save as, rename. Even though it's referencing the same parts, it's a different assembly, so those could be updated independently in Composer as well. So very good question there. Okay. Number 8, navigational controls. Let's jump back to Composer. And let's go ahead and show those. So Control and Alt in Composer are really going to help you out here. And that's something that I notice a lot of people when they first start the program don't understand or don't realize, because that's not really in a whole lot of training material or anything or any tips online that actually tell that. If you try to rotate the model, it's kind of goofy sometimes. I'm just right clicking and rotating, and sometimes this one's not too bad. It's a pretty small assembly, but sometimes you get into these predicaments where you're trying to get an angle and you really can't get that angle. If you hold down Control and right click, you get better control, in my opinion, better control over how the model rotates. So a model rotates a specific way in SOLIDWORKS. So if you are a SOLIDWORKS user, in Composer, if you hold down Control and right click to rotate, you'll notice that it rotates differently, or it rotates probably more how you would expect it to rotate. It's even hard for me to explain what it's doing. I've tried to kind of define this of what's the difference between right click rotate and Control click rotate, and it's really hard to define. I think it's a difference between rotating around the model origin or rotating around a bounding box origin, which is if you take all the geometry, box it, where's the center of that box compared to where's the center of the actual geometry. And that's kind of the difference there. So just give that a shot. I think you'll notice that there'll be a big difference. Now Alt, if you hold down Alt and you right click rotate, it rotates around an axis. So if you want to rotate around a specific axis, hold down Alt and you can get that to kind of spin in 3D space. Like right here, I can spin it along. It looks like, I don't know, it would be relative to the view of the Z-axis, even though it's not the Z-axis on the model kind of deal. Something like that. And that's really good if you're holding on Control, rotating something like this, and you're like, I just want this to rotate a little bit like counterclockwise, and you can do that to kind of reposition on the screen to get it to fit. Oops. Something like that. Okay, so that's the rotate. Now pan is middle mouse button. I get these arrows and I can pan around. Zoom is the mouse wheel, and if you are a SOLIDWORKS user, you'll immediately realize that it zooms the wrong direction. So SOLIDWORKS or Composer by default zooms reversed from SOLIDWORKS. Now that can be changed. This isn't really in the top 10, but I might as well show it. If I go to not document properties, it's going to be File, Preferences. Go to Navigation, you'll see there's a set as SOLIDWORKS, so you can also reverse the mouse wheel and stuff like that here. So it's if that is tripping you up, you can adjust that in the properties there. Okay, so navigational controls, or back to navigational controls. Let's go ahead and get this guy kind of, I don't know, at a certain angle, kind of move it, and something like that. We'll get a good isometric view going here. And that's the basis of the navigational controls. There's also some hotkeys here. If I mouse over and I hit Tab, I can hide things temporarily. If I move the mouse away, they come back. If I click on something and hit H, I can hide it. That actually hides it in the tree and unchecks it. We can go ahead and bring it back. Keep in mind too, this assembly tree is going to be the same as it is in SOLIDWORKS here. Okay, so let's go back here. And let's go to properties. So properties are huge in Composer. So without really knowing properties and identifying what they're doing and knowing how to work with them and how they're going to change, it makes it very difficult to work within Composer. Once you understand properties, it makes understanding the software, understanding what's going to happen when it updates, just a lot more user-friendly to work with. And it looks like we have another question here. So looks like this question is, sounds like your voice is cutting out every so often. So that's not really a question, I guess. I'm sorry, I don't know. It might be connection on my side, my connection on your side. I am recording this, so if audio does drop at all during the presentation, I mean, we will have the recording online, and there's not really a whole lot I can do on this end at this point for the audio, so apologize for that if there is a problem. Okay, so number 7, properties. If I go to our model, and let's go ahead and increase this up so we can actually see the properties here. If I click on a model or a part, you can see that actually populates in the properties here. And as I go through, I can change these properties. So what you need to understand is when you import the models into Composer, it actually brings properties in from that original model source. So we're going to assume that's SOLIDWORKS for now. So it's going to look at the SOLIDWORKS part, look at the SOLIDWORKS assembly, what colors are the parts, what colors are the faces, where they're located in the assembly, how they're assembled together, and the metadata. So that's going to be the custom properties from the SOLIDWORKS file. So when you go into a SOLIDWORKS part and you say insert custom properties, material, part number, description, whatever you want to put in there, all that data comes into Composer and it comes in as metadata as a property. So I clicked on this guy here. If I scroll down the list in the properties, user properties, this is all the metadata that's coming with that part. I can reference that in annotations and bill of materials. I can link to it with what's called event linking, so I can create like hyperlinks and link to different properties and really use that data in Composer. I can also modify how this part looks. For instance, color, if I said, well, this part is red, right? Now I've forced that color to be red. This guy over here, maybe I want to make it red as well. I could do that. I could also take the eyedrop tool, eyedrop this one, and it will copy those properties over. So by controlling properties in Composer, we can force that data. So if you change a property in Composer, that's a forced property change. Now if you say update with SOLIDWORKS, the whole document will update. Anything you forced, anything that's being forced, will then apply to the updated model. So you can force changes to the properties, update with SOLIDWORKS, and your forced properties changes would be affected going forward in your updated document. You can also force changes, but then say, hey, when I update, look back at SOLIDWORKS. If this is purple in SOLIDWORKS, make it purple in Composer. And I'll explain that here in actually the next step, kind of more detail. But if I select the models in the properties, we say environmental effects. If I change this to, let's say, like metal, you can see everything gets like a metal sheen to it. Maybe these guys, environmental effects, change these to chrome. Now I'm not setting a material as chrome. This isn't any kind of metadata. This is 100% visual, just to say, make it look nicer is what's going on here. If I click on this part here, environmental effect, maybe gold. If I click on the environment itself, I also have properties for that. And I can go ahead and choose different lighting schemes here. This actually one doesn't look too bad here, metal 3 lights. And maybe we'll turn on our static lighting, which is how the lights are applied in Composer. Static lighting uses positionary lights instead of lights attached to the camera. So as I rotate, the lights won't change. Per pixel lighting just kind of tightens everything up. And let's go ahead and go to ambient occlusion. This is kind of fake shadowing. It adds a little bit of shadowing in any included part. Any crevice is going to add this little bit of shadowing. And again, it just makes it look nicer. Maybe not realistic. That'd be more for the shadows. But for the ambient occlusion, I think it looks nice, right? And it's just for visual purposes. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to our next step, because that pretty much ties into what we're currently talking about here. So we basically went through and clicked on components, edited properties, pointed out that there's metadata there. Alright, so next, let's go to understanding the views. Now, properties and views, they really go hand in hand. So this is currently 2 steps, right? Are 2 things you should know, but really they're closely knit together. And it looks like we have one more question here. It says, when making changes, can I isolate the Composer file from the SOLIDWORKS model? Yes, you can. So, and I hope I understand this question correctly, but let me go ahead and explain this, and if I don't answer your question, let me know, but I'll try to. So isolating the Composer document separate from the SOLIDWORKS file. So when you import anything into Composer, you are actually, it's not linking to that SOLIDWORKS model anymore until you tell it to. So if you said, I want to take this assembly, let's import it into Composer, I can do anything I want to it in Composer and make those changes. If I go back to SOLIDWORKS, I can change a bunch of SOLIDWORKS. I go back to Composer, nothing changes in my Composer document. I can then, maybe draw a line in the sand, save that Composer document as like an archive file, and I can go to it, 6 months, 2 years later, or whatever, and it's going to be that same file. It's not going to change with SOLIDWORKS. Now, if I open it, I can choose for it to look back at SOLIDWORKS, and I just say File, Update, SOLIDWORKS Files. It updates, has all the latest changes. Now you just save that as a different file name, so that'd be like RevB or whatever the next revision is. And so you have your lined in the sand Composer document you can always go back to that has your changes, and then your new Composer document that has those changes from SOLIDWORKS. So I hope that answered the question. If not, let me know, and I'll try to I guess rephrase or figure out what exactly you're referring to. Okay, so moving on, and of course let me know if that wasn't your question. 10 things you should know about Composer. Number 6 is understanding views and neutral properties. So let's jump to that guy now. Oop, there we go. Okay, so views and the neutral properties very closely linked together. So if I go here and I say create new view under views, that takes a snapshot of what I have on the screen, right? And so that's going to record everything here that it changes. It's going to be, these items are red, that has like a gold material applied, this is chrome, everything has a metal sheen to it, and that is going to isolate that information in this view. So if I were to update this right now, and my SOLIDWORKS files, maybe these components turned, I don't know, silver, and this guy was purple or something, and I update this, the Composer is going to look at that new purple part and reapply this chrome to it. It's going to look at that silver part and reapply this red to it. So it will take the geometry changes and it will physically look different, but it will reapply these properties that this view is forcing. Now if I were to create another view, I'm just going to go here and say create view, makes a cloned copy of the current view, and I select it. And here under properties, you see how there is a set as neutral property and there's a restore neutral property. So these are neutral properties of the current Composer document. Now when you update with SOLIDWORKS, these properties could change, because it's whenever you update, the entire neutral properties of the document is going to update with whatever the neutral properties is in SOLIDWORKS. So if I said restore neutral properties, you'll see that it goes back to the way it was. That's because this is the way it is in SOLIDWORKS, and this is the way it's being forced in Composer. I update that view. Now these two views are different from each other, because one's referencing the neutral properties, and one is referencing my forced information. So if I were to update this, and this part turned blue, or let's choose another color, green. Right now this view would be red. This view that is blue would turn green, because that's looking at that properties. Now where people get confused with this, and this is why it's in the top 10, is that if I select these components and I go to say set as neutral properties and I click that, it now assigns those properties as the neutral properties of this document. However, if I update with SOLIDWORKS, those neutral properties will change. So I go back to view 2 and it looks right? Let me go ahead and refresh that. So view 2 looks right. The difference between view 1 and view 2 is when I update, view 2 will change colors depending on what's in SOLIDWORKS, view 1 will stay the same. Because view 1 is still being pushed. But if I select these guys, said restore neutral property, and then updated the first view, it would also change color with when you update from SOLIDWORKS. So tip here is if you're going to be forcing changes, don't say restore neutral properties. Well, you can, that's fine. Or I'm saying you can set it as neutral properties, but after you do that, don't update the view. Jump somewhere else, jump back to the view, and then update it. Because if you update the view at that point, it's then re-referencing that SOLIDWORKS information. So hopefully that makes sense. It's kind of it's a hard one to explain, but I think once you play with it a little bit, it will make some sense with that explanation. Okay, so I am now going to make a new view, but this time I'm going to make what's called a camera view. So this is another part of understanding the views. So the difference between a camera view and a standard view is a standard view forces everything. So this current view here is forcing red, gold, colors, all that stuff. This view here isn't forcing anything. It looks like it is, but it's not, because I said restore neutral properties, and the neutral properties of this document is what you're seeing. And so it's just, I'm sorry, let me jump back here. So this view 2 is only controlling, it's controlling the camera angle. It's also controlling where all of these parts are located. If I were to take these guys and I put a grenade in here and blew it up, and then I went back to view 2, you'll see that it sucks it back together. Now if I did that again, I blew it up, every time I go to view 1 as the camera angle or camera view, you can see that has this gray section there. It doesn't do anything, because this view is just looking at the camera angle. If I were to rotate the view, go back there, rotates back. Zoom in, go back there, zooms back. And so this view here is only affecting the camera angle. That's very important to understand. That, and the reason why we use that is because if I wanted to zoom in, kind of take a look at something, select that, I can go to this view 1 camera angle, and I can bring it back to how it was, and my selection is still there. So I don't have to try to eye that in, try to rotate and zoom back out and get to where I was, kind of deal. So that is what that is for. Okay, so that is the explanation of neutral properties and views. So we create views, we create camera views. Oh, one more thing, update views. So this update view button here, that's if you were to make a change. Let's say I grab a component. I'm going to go over these tools here in the next step, so just show that real quick. And I want that to change here. I can say update. And now this view is updated with my current changes here. So that's what that is. Okay. Jumping back to our PowerPoint. Number 5. So we're halfway through this. The Transform tab. So there's tabs at the top of Composer interface here. And the Author tab and Transform tab are the two main things that you really need to learn in order to be effective with Composer. The Transform tab is number 1 on my list here, or I guess number 5 on the list, but number 1 in the between the Transform and the Author. Okay, so what we need to really pay attention here is the copy tools, which is the copy transformation and the copy location, and also the translate tools, which are here, basically translate and rotate. Free drag, try to avoid that, it just causes problems. Alright, we go to SOLIDWORKS or Composer, and let's go ahead. Transform tab, we have copy transformation, copy location, translate, and rotate. Those are the 3 items that we're going to be focusing on here. So let's go ahead and pan this over, maybe do a little rotate, holding down Control here to kind of get to rotate how I want. Maybe even zoom out a little bit. I just want to kind of put this in the top corner so I can have some room here to create an exploded view. Create a new view. There we go. And now I'm going to use the Transform Translate to start grabbing these items and dragging them out. So I'm just going to go and grab the spark plug, drag it out. One good tip here is if I grab some items, I go to Translate. See these navigational arrows here. If I hold down Alt, you'll see the difference. If right now I'm going to mouse over the green and really nothing happens, if I hold down Alt and mouse over the green lights up. You see that green arrow lights up. The red arrow lights up, blue arrow lights up. That really verifies that, excuse me, that really verifies that you have now selected that arrow. So I'm going to hold down Alt, I'm going to go ahead and click on that guy, and I'm going to drag it along that axis. Alright. Now, these 2 items here, I want to translate out exactly the same as those. So I'm going to select them, and if I try to eye them in, I probably won't get it perfect. So what I can do is I can go up here and I can go Copy Transformation, click on Copy Transformation, just mouse over the other ones, you'll see the ghosting there. They'll actually pop exactly where you want them to go. I click on that, and now I've moved them out the exact amount. If I said Copy Location, you see that they're actually go and undo that. So if I say copy location, what's going to happen is they're going to move to where the other items are. Copy location there, and you can't see them because they're actually in the exact same spot as these two bolts. So they're overlapping each other. So location puts it over each other in the exact same coordinates. The copy transformation just copies their movement, so it makes it easy to go ahead and do something like that. Okay, let's go ahead and grab this guy. Let's do a translate. Hold down Alt, make sure I get the right axis here, and translate that out. And maybe one more. Now there are some other tools here that are useful, but I don't use them that often. The automated explode tools, like linear. Once you kind of translate things out, linear works pretty good at keeping your current spacing and just kind of stretching them out from each other. So that's a really nice way to kind of fine-tune what you're doing. The spherical, that works really good for putting, I like to refer to it as just like a grenade, right? You just kind of blow it up and create a real quick exploded tool there. The rotate, we're going to use this one quite a bit too. And this is another use of the Alt command. So I hold down Alt, and if I choose a circular reference, I can rotate this guy along that reference. If I hold down Alt and I choose, like, I don't know, this edge here, let's go and pick an edge, maybe this edge right there, I can now rotate it along that edge. So that's holding down Alt to actually choose where you want that to rotate. Alright, so I got this view. Let's go ahead and create a new one. And we got that exploded out there. So that's, in a nutshell, the transform tools that we want to learn to really be successful with the program. Copy transformation, that's a big one. Use it all the time, saves you a lot of time. Translate and rotate. So basically with those three tools, you can move things where you want, you can rotate them around how you want, and you can copy those changes to really get how you want those applied. The alignment tools here are very useful as well. Think of these as mates, as in SOLIDWORKS mates, but once you apply it, it's a temporary mate where it doesn't hold that attachment, so later on you can still move the models around. It doesn't create the restraints. Okay. Going back to our PowerPoint. Next one is the Author tab, another big one here. So the Author tab, what it is it is a way to bring two-dimensional elements into your 3D space. And so what we're going to be focusing on here is the arrows, paths, which is basically exploded lines, 2D images, which is exactly how it sounds. It's bringing any kind of, I got a photo, a rendering, a screenshot, whatever it's a photo, it's an image. You can bring that into Composer and use it to actually as reference in your documentation. And of course, labels here. That's a big one. It should be called annotations. It's just a different verbiage than SOLIDWORKS, but it's the same thing. Okay, let's go ahead and jump to Composer, and we got our Author tab. And let's go ahead and let's do the exploded lines here. So, and that's referred to as paths. So if I were to select these four bolts, I go to Path, I can create an associated path from neutral. So going back to that neutral property, there's a neutral property for these current bolts here that say the neutral property location for these parts is here. So all it's doing is it's snapping a line from each bolt back to where it came from. Now I can select those lines, and if you look in the Collaboration tab here under Paths, they're actually selected. So we actually have two assembly trees. We got one assembly tree for our 3D models. We got one assembly tree for our 2D elements, which is currently this polyline path. Going back to properties, in the property menu, I can adjust these paths. I got these extremities, so you can see these points at the beginning and end, and just set those to none. I like to set this to like red to really make it stand out. And this is another one here, a big one. Stay on top of you. Uncheck that. Your lines will go through the models. They're two-dimensional. They go through 3D space, which is really convenient. And at any time, let me pop that back over there. Anytime I can just click the model or click the view, update, and I can update and kind of see the lines there. Another thing I'll just throw in here, just because it's good to know, is if I go to maybe transform these guys up, you'll see that the lines actually follow point A to point B. Now you can control that to a point in Composer. You see the construct mode. I can go ahead and say like based on the world axis, and I can choose how these are actually going to jog. And I can choose which axis I'm using as well. So just keep in mind that that is possible to manipulate it that way as well. Go back there, and there we go. Okay, so going back to author, that's the path. Let's go ahead and insert an arrow. So I just clicked on arrow. Again, Alt comes into play here, where I want to select circular edges. So with Alt held down, it allows me to attach to circular edges of the model. I'm going to go into this attach to maybe this, not there. Let's go and attach to right there. There we go. Make sure I get a good linear arrow going on. And then of course properties of that arrow, you can always go in here and say, I want to kind of sharpen it up. Something like that. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and update that view. So we'll see the view updated. And now let's go ahead and throw some labels on there. So if I said label, and I threw a label maybe on, I don't know, this component here, maybe this component there, you'll notice, at least in my installation, this might be different on yours, is that my properties for this label, I'm unable to edit it. It's because I have a custom style assigned. But what I can do is I can unsubscribe that style just by going to styles, unsubscribe, go back to author, and now I can edit this label, which is really convenient. So if you ever get to that point, you're like, it's not letting me edit it, just go to styles and unsubscribe it, and you can do whatever you want to it. Okay, so this label here that I have selected, let's go ahead and point out what we can do with it. So right now the text is pointing to the tooltip, and this right here for text, this is where this data is being pulled from for that label. So I can pull from any of the metadata that's in this part that's attached to. This is just metadata that's been assigned to it in SOLIDWORKS, and I can just reference that. I can also say this is a string, and I can type in whatever I want. Test is just a default go-to there. Also, you'll see that there's an option to point to a tooltip, and this is pretty important as well. So I can have it point to a tooltip, and then if I go to the model, I can specify what that tooltip is. Right now, the tooltip is pointing to actor name. I can also tell this to point to different properties. It seems like we're kind of doubling up efforts here, but really the point of this is to have two sources for data. So if I had I can have an annotation calling out the tooltip. What does the tooltip point to? Maybe it points to a description in the part, and then when I publish this out as like an SVG and you mouse over it, that mouse tooltip that pops up will actually call that out separately. So you can have multiple, you can display multiple data strings. It just allows you kind of that option, which is nice. Okay, let's go and update the view. Let's kind of do that after each step here. Image 2D, this is the last one in the authoring panel here. So image 2D, you just kind of make a box wherever you want. You can always edit it later. With that box selected under texture map path, I can map this to any image on my computer. If I go to screwdriver here, open that up, and you see the screwdriver is skewed. All I need to do is just grab the screwdriver, the corner, hold down shift, and it will automatically kind of resize to the ratio of the uploaded image. Now, this could be a photo, a screenshot, anything you want, some wiring harness photo that you took because you don't want to model that in Composer or in SOLIDWORKS and bring that in. It's many uses for this image. What I really like about it is you can go ahead and do it like an attachment, and I can go ahead and say, I don't know, let's go point to the screw here and say, we're going to screw that on, you know. So if you look at this, I mean, anybody in the world can tell what you're trying to convey here. You have a screwdriver image, you have a screw, you have an arrow pointing to the screw. What are you going to do? You're either going to unscrew it or you're going to screw it in. So it's pretty obvious what that step is. Instead of spelling that out in text, and then if you want to ship it overseas somewhere, you have to now do a text translation into that language. It can be costly, it can be not time effective, and most of all mistakes. You know, language translation is a big issue when there aren't good translations for certain topics. Now, this bringing in an image, bringing in any kind of 2D stuff really helps with that. So it really helps you be effective in the software. Okay, let's jump back to our PowerPoint here. Number 3, putting it all together. So now that we've learned all these tools, let's do something with it. So basically I'm going to create this step-by-step instructional content. And then we're going to keep it in Composer at this point here. So I got this image, let's go and update, we look good. Now I want to start assembling this together. I'm going to go ahead and select these 3 items. Maybe I'll leave that one. Just these 2 guys. I'm going to hide them. H on the keyboard to hide them. And let's go ahead and do a little new view. And now I'm going to start assembling these guys together. So this is my first part I want to assemble. So I'm going to click on it. I'm going to go to Transform, Restore Neutral Position. I didn't point this out earlier in the transform because it didn't apply at that point, but this is another important transform option. You could also go over here and say Restore Neutral Properties. That will force it to go into location. However, it's going to force everything. It's going to force the color, metadata, all that stuff, and we don't really want to be worrying about that right now. We just want to restore the neutral position, its location. So clicking on that, I can control just the items, just the specific properties I want for it to go back in. I create a new view, click on this guy, restore. The reason why I left this there is to show how it actually moves with that component. So I click on that, restore it, set a new view, got that. Now this guy here I'm going to take, I think the spark plug goes next. So we'll take this little tiny spark plug, restore neutral positions, and then I'm going to select this label and hide it. And now create a new view. You'll see when I go back, when I go here, it's going to hide that label and put that guy into location. You often also notice Composer is automating everything. It's automating the animation. So later on, if you want to create an animation, if you want to bring some to the timeline, export an AVI or something, it's already doing the work for you, which is really nice. Okay, so now I want to take this guy, same thing, restore. This guy, restore, new view. And now I want to select these 4 bolts. I don't really want to select the 2D things. So there's different tricks in order to do this. If I do a box select, left to right or right to left, if I do a left to right, I'm going to select those bolts and all of this information around it. If I do a right to left, I only select what's in that box, so I can just select the bolts without worrying about selecting any of the other items, which is just a really nice tip there, I think. Restore neutral position. That's going to suck just the bolts in because the exploded lines are attached to it, which are referred to as paths in Composer, and because that arrow is attached to it, everything moves with it, as you would expect, as it actually assembles itself. I'm going to go ahead and create another new step. There it is. Take this guy, let's hide it. Again, H on the keyboard. Double click in the environment to kind of do a little zoom to fit. Maybe do a little rotate and a better zoom to get a good feel here. And just like that, boom, we got our finished assembly instructional content here. Pretty easy to do, and you'll see that I didn't use, there's a lot of tools in Composer. I haven't used hardly any. The only ones I've even used to do everything you've seen is a couple things in the author tool. I did an arrow, path, label, that's it. In the transform, I did translate. I haven't even rotated anything. Use that copy transformation. So just these very few tools, you get them down, you can be pretty dangerous and very effective in the software. So again, the top 10 things, there's 1,000 things that you could learn, but these 10 things really are going to set you apart from the rest and get you that head start on working in the software. Okay, so let's go back. Wrong one there. There we go. And let's go down one more. Now, number 2 in the list is publishing. And we're going to be focused on publishing a high resolution image using the high resolution image workshop. So basically all of the steps that we made, all the views that we made, we're going to export those as images and use those wherever we want. There are a few different publications that we can choose from. Let's go ahead and focus on this guy here. So I'm just going to go to the top of the list, and I'm going to go to Workshops, High Res Image, right there. And now I can choose under high resolution what my pixels are going to be, what the DPI is going to be. This guy here for use document paper, that's going to use whatever the paper is set to. Since I'm using the viewport ratio, I said that in the properties, it doesn't really matter. White background, we move ground, it's already done, so we don't have to worry about that. Quality, might as well turn that all the way up and get some nice quality images. Alpha channel, this is going to be if you export a PNG, any white space that's not model is going to be canceled out. So if you bring this into Photoshop, you could actually overlay this model over an image and get a nice clean border around the model itself to actually kind of product placement in its natural environment. If I go to multiple, I want to say views to say all the views. Over here we got 4, 8, 12. So 12 renderings. Do a save as. Got a publication folder here, and I'm just going to save it as a PNG right there. And just like that, the status down here at the bottom, that's all 12 images that I've just rendered out all at once. I can go to that folder and kind of check them out. Take a look here. You'll see that the background's kind of that blue, that default Microsoft Windows photo viewer. Really, it's just, there's no data there, so it's just filling in with that blue color. Alright, so there's our images that we just created. And I do want to talk a little bit, just because we do have a little bit of time here, to talk about other publications. So that's the main publication. That's you're exporting images. Images can be used anywhere. You can bring it into like even a movie editor, and you're doing this step-by-step movie and just bring in images. You don't need anything moving and say this is that. It's a video. It's been compiled. You can bring it into documentation like Word or InDesign, Publisher, and bring those together and start creating your step-by-step assembly instructions, which we'll show here in a minute. You can bring it into your websites. So have your website directly linked to the directory that you're exporting from Composer, and then when you export and you overwrite those images later on, your website automatically adjusts itself. So if you create these references and you kind of depend on the external references outside of Composer, you can really create some cool stuff with these linkings. Of course, that takes some file structure management, but if that is a problem, we can always just archive that and re-render it out, relink it, and it still works really well. Alright, let's go to my favorite here. So I'm going to add this guy in here. If you do a save as package, it's just another way to publish this out. I want to do an exe and just save that. So what that does, and it's very fast how it saves out, is that will create an exe of your current document that you can send to anybody. They can open it up as long as they're using a PC. They don't have to install anything. It's a self-executable, and they'll be able to see all the stuff that you created in real time. So if I go to that exe right there and I open it, what this will do is it will load the player that's actually built into the file and allow me to rotate, take a look at these different items that we've done in Composer. And it's all interactive, right? So we can rotate and click on things, I can hide things, I can come in here and I can take a look deeper into the model. And this, you can control this too. If you don't want people doing that, you can set limitations. Okay, so let's get back on track here. We'll go to the PowerPoint. And so what we did here, published out some images, basically just created PNGs, JPEGs, bitmaps, you name it, but pushed all those out at once. Now I go to my last set here, or my last step, and it's compiling documentation and updating that documentation. So this can be used with any linking program, any program that can import an image, link to that image location, you can do this with. So really your options out there there's a lot of them. I'm going to use Microsoft Word just because it's the most common. So if I go to my publication folder, I have a Word document, title, let's go ahead and put, I don't know, instruction. I want to insert a table. Let's do, I don't know, 2 by however many we want. And now in these cells, if I say insert, picture, and let's go to the top 10 things, work files, publication, there we go. These are the images I just pushed out. I can go ahead and click on one of these, say insert, insert and link. So it's going to insert it into the Word document, but it's also linking to that file. So when that file updates, it will update in the Word document. Go here, do that again one more time. So if I say insert photo, I'm just going to do 2 of them just for time's sake. Here, we'll just choose one of these items here randomly, maybe this guy here. We'll say insert, insert and link. So now I've inserted and linked to that image. Now over here I'll do my text for this step does this step does that, or better yet, no text at all. If you can explain and show every step of the process visually with an image, I mean that's much better than adding text and trying to do it that way, because then you have to do that language translations and all that other fun stuff that nobody really likes to do. Okay, so I'm going to save that document just like that. Go to Composer. Let's go ahead and save this as well, because we haven't saved it at all. But there we go. So now we've saved both of our documents. So now let's say that it's 6 months later and we need to update our Composer documentation. So what you do is this is what it looked like when you first open it. you go File, Update, SOLIDWORKS Composer, or whatever document that you want to update from. You can see in the list, there's actually quite a few options for import and update into Composer. So it doesn't have to necessarily be SOLIDWORKS. It's just, we like SOLIDWORKS because SOLIDWORKS is such an awesome program. So we'll say SOLIDWORKS, and let's go to our updated assembly. There is our file, and that's it. You just say update. If it will automatically point back to the file used to import. I re-navigated because I have a different folder and a different assembly I'm updating with. So this kind of goes back to that original question of what if we, let me go and click update while I'm talking about this. And they say, what if we changed the file name before bringing it in? That's fine. You can also make a copy of that assembly, kind of maybe pack and go it to another location in the vault or wherever. Make your changes to that so you have different revisions of SOLIDWORKS assembly, and then you can choose in Composer which revision you're updating from. During the update, I didn't show it there, but there was a little SOLIDWORKS option on the left during the update screen where I could actually choose which configuration to update with. One piece of key advice, I guess, is that where is there it is, still updating, is that the update and import options. So that's the merged file, the one actor per part, the merges or import as bodies. You want that to stay consistent from import and update. If you change the options between the two, it can cause kind of goofy results. So just make sure that if you're seeing update issues, that's probably what's going on if those options have changed. Okay, so I've updated my Composer document. Now I want to point out that all of my steps are green, right? Even though we told that to be red, it's green. This goes back to, I think it was like the second or third step in that whole, or I guess it'd be number 9 or 8, talking about the neutral properties. And I wanted to wait to this point to really explain that. So you'll see that this point here, it's green. I go back here and it's red. Now why is that? It's because, remember, I created this view and I said restore neutral properties. I set the neutral properties as this red. So this view is looking at whatever SOLIDWORKS has. I based all my other views off of that one, not off of this one. If I would have based it off of this one, all my other views would have remained with my changes. Since I based it off this one, it remained whatever is set in SOLIDWORKS. So what I can do now that I have this view here, and I refer to this as the custom properties view, or your driven properties view, someplace that you're going to set all your properties and say, hey, this is controlling that, and when we update, we're going to use it to fix any issues that went on. By having this view, it's like the golden ticket. You just click it, you say set as neutral properties. Oh shoot, I forgot. You have to save the document, and you have to close it and open it. That is actually it is a bug in the software. And it's submitted as an SR. They're working on it, but you have to save, close, reopen for it to work. So okay, so we're back to where we were. I click on it. I say set as neutral properties. Again, the golden ticket here. Set, rebuild all the views, and all the views now will have my settings that I said. The red and my Chrome and all that stuff. Now when I updated from SOLIDWORKS, I didn't point this out, I should have. This guy changed, has like this new step in there. It's a bit larger than it was before. This is larger, it also has a hole in there. If I go back to my Word document, you can see how it's smaller. This guy is smaller. I think this was smaller too. The air filter, yeah, it's a little bit. So those are the changes in SOLIDWORKS that are being reflected into Composer. Using this magic ticket view, maybe I'll copyright that because I just made that up, but it sounds pretty good. You can use that to then push that data to any other step. Okay, so let's go ahead and update the Word document. I just go high-res image, keep all my settings the same. I go properties, neutral, multiple views here, save as, go to PNG, and then let's go to our publication. There we go, save. It's going to overwrite all those images, and it overwrites them fast. If I were to close this Word document and open it, it would update. You can also go to the links and just say update. I want to show when I click this update, you'll see the changes to these guys. Update, And this guy got a little bit bigger and some changes there. I've now updated my Word document from SOLIDWORKS. So changes in SOLIDWORKS, changes in Composer, changes in Word. I then do a save as a PDF, and that's my controlled document for this file. Alrighty, so that concludes our presentation today. Again, this was the top 10 things you need to know to use SOLIDWORKS Composer effectively. Again, my name is Scott Woods. My contact information is here, and if you want to contact anybody at Hawk Ridge, we can get a hold of them here. But basically, if you have any questions that pop up after this presentation, shoot me an email. I'll be glad to answer them. Also, always throw out, if you have any suggestions for presentations for specific topics that you want covered in the future, let me know. We're always taking suggestions and actually using those to drive what we present here.